You are watching Kings. Every Saturday, we tell the story of how big brands conquered the world. How Dom Perignon became the king of champagne. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out. Hello Aluxers, it's great to have you here with us today as we're breaking down how Dom Perignon became the toasting champagne of choice. In this video, we'll be looking at how the company came to be, the strategy they used, the struggles they had to overcome, and if you watch until the end, you'll learn what the future holds for this exquisite bottle of bubbly. Dom Perignon, the big picture. Considered the father of champagne, Dom Perignon is produced by Moet Chandon, co-owners of the world's largest luxury group, LVMH or Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. Located and produced at none other than the famous L'Avenue de Champagne, Épernay, France, Dom Perignon is still ranked on Forbes as one of their top 10 champagnes. They share in Moet Chandon's approximately 1,715 employees and contribute to over $1.35 billion in revenue. Dom Perignon battles for the top spot among some of the finest champagnes, such as Krug, Bollinger, Perrier-Jouet, and Amand de Brignac. Although they have worldwide presence, their dominant markets are within the UK and the US. With the time between the release of vintage bottles, it's interesting to discover how Dom Perignon keeps being the champagne of choice for many celebratory occasions. But first, let's see how it all began. The beginning. The champagne is named after its founder, Dom Pierre Perignon, who was a French Benedictine monk born in 1638. As a young monk, he became the cellarer of the Benedictine Abbey, where, under his lead, the vineyard and abbey prospered. Perignon found a unique way of improving the quality of wines by blending the grapes, pioneering and developing how to produce clear white wine from black grapes. Perignon was an advocate for using natural processes and frowned upon the use of additives and foreign substances. His reputation preceded him to gain the attention of the wine merchants of His Majesty King Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, which thereafter saw his wine enter the royal court of Versailles. The first vintage bottle of Dom Perignon was made in the early 1900s. However, it was only 15 years later when they released it for sale. Simon Brothers & Co., a company that imported Moet in the United Kingdom, were the first to order 300 bottles. The wine gained incredible popularity and 100 boxes were imported to the US soon after that. It's recorded that James Buchanan Duke, the founder of American Tobacco Company, was so fond of the champagne, he ordered 100 bottles for his own pleasure. The struggle. Despite the rumors, Dom Perignon was not the founder of the champagne method. When he began his work, he had problems with the fermentation process as well as having to deal with lower quality glass bottles that would often explode. He introduced the use of thicker glass bottles and exchanged the wood used to seal the bottle for corks wrapped with hemp string soaked in oil. This helped the wine keep fresh and sparkling. During the Great Depression of the 1900s, the UK and France felt the effects. For 4 years, champagne brands reduced prices due to the decline in sales. To maintain profit, they found ways to lessen their expenses, but sales dropped considerably. So swiftly that no amount of budgeting and cutting costs could stop their losses. Many champagne houses went bankrupt, and some sold off their vineyards. It was Lawrence Venn, the UK marketing consultant to the Syndicate de Grand Marquis de Champagne, that proposed to the champagne houses the production of a luxury cuvée. Everyone rejected this idea because of the exorbitant prices. Everyone except Robert Jean de Vosges of Moet Chandon, who understood it would be sold to the wealthy sector of the UK. Within 3 years, 300 replicas of the 18th century champagne bottles were created and were imported by Simon Brothers & Co. for 150 of their elite clientele. Strategy. Throughout its early history, Dom Perignon catered to a specific demographic, typically men and what we would call today old money. These two groups had similar characteristics and traits. Both would most likely enjoy traveling, own multiple cars and homes. They would come from a highly educated upper-class background, holding exclusive positions, or would have inherited wealth, and both would see consuming Dom Perignon as a pastime that would become a tradition. To maintain its flavor with the upper class, Dom Perignon was adamant about making its vintage batches from the highest quality of grapes. Every year the harvests are different, and if they didn't meet Dom Perignon's requirements, they would forego declaring a vintage. In a way, this made the previous vintage more exclusive and the next vintage more anticipated. The defining moment. It is understood that Dom Perignon's success in finding a way to blend grapes was monumental. However, if it wasn't for Robert Jean de Vosges of Moet Chandon having those 300 bottles imported to the UK, the popularity wouldn't have grown amongst the elite of Europe, and in turn, it wouldn't have been sought after in the United States. That was definitely the popping of the cork for Dom Perignon. Controversy. As its popularity increased with royalty, in the mid-late 1900s, the Shah of Iran, for the 2,500-year celebration of the Persian Empire, made a large order of the first vintage of Dom Perignon Rosé. One of those bottles from that order made it to an auction and sold for approximately $27,840 just 11 years ago. Dom Perignon was also the champagne of choice for the wedding of Lady Diana Spencer and Prince Charles. The magnums of Dom Perignon Vintage 1961 carried a special insignia created just for the ceremony. However, despite the prestige, Dom Perignon is not classified as a Grand Cru champagne. Only certain vineyards are classified as Grand Cru, meaning the grapes for the champagne must only be made from specific vineyards in order to qualify. Dom Perignon is an assemblage, as we've mentioned, with many grapes from Grand Cru vineyards. However, each blend always includes grapes from the original vineyard of Haute-Villers, which is classified as Premier Cru fruit. Did you know so much went into champagne? If you're curious to learn more, check out our video, The 15 Things You Didn't Know About Champagne, by clicking in the top right corner. The value. As every champagne brand carries its own ethos, with Dom Perignon being there from the beginning, you have to expect that through their vines runs something deeper. We already mentioned earlier, their emphasis is always being a vintage wine, never compromising on quality. Dom Perignon is always an assemblage. There's always one rosé assemblage and one blanc assemblage. Although Dom Perignon selects grapes from all 17 Grand Crus of Champagne, the blend is one and indivisible. Both the rosé and the blanc boasts incredible aging potential, reaching its fullness after 8 years in the cellar. When it comes to the price, there's a reason you'll spend a little extra on a bottle of Dom Perignon. Firstly, on average, only 20% of champagne grapes meet the standards for the wine, due to the maturity of the grapes during that particular year, the amount of rain, sun, and other weather conditions. The process for Dom Perignon champagne is long and adheres to strict quality standards throughout. The more expensive grapes plus the labor is what produces higher base prices, which will vary with the release of every vintage. Like most luxury items, exclusivity and quality is only part of the pricing equation. Coupled with high demand from consumers, it continues to give the company the power to jack up those price tags. The results. We must express our ideal, our singularity, striving always toward an absolute. It is a quest without end, where the inspiration keeps its mystery for Dom Perignon to reinvent itself with each vintage. Richard Jeffrey, Chef de Cave Dom Perignon. With the release of each new vintage, Dom Perignon did exactly as they set out to do, which was to reinvent themselves, keeping their customers longing for its arrival. Under the ownership of Moet Chandon, they ensured that Dom Perignon was not short of the finest selection of grapes, as they currently own 2,900 acres of vineyards. Though many luxury products confidently and successfully sell themselves, Moet Chandon gave Dom Perignon a couple of added extras that ensured they set themselves apart. During the early 2000s, for the first time in 74 years, Dom Perignon allowed for an artistic twist to their iconic label. They paid tribute to Andy Warhol with their 2002 vintage, releasing labels with 3 different designs, establishing Dom Perignon as a cultural and heritage brand. Another noteworthy collaboration was with artist Jeff Koons. He collaborated with the brand, creating the Balloon Venus for Dom Perignon, a version of his renowned sculpture which houses a bottle of Dom Perignon Rosé Vintage 2003. Handsomely priced at $20,000 with only 100 to 200 being made. From the story of Dom Perignon, we can learn that when presenting yourself, present your best and never sacrifice quality for quantity. The future. As an advocate for change, Dom Perignon brought on last year Lenny Kravitz as its first global creative director, with the goal to allow his years in music, acting, design, and photography to inspire a fresh direction for the brand. His first release with Dom Perignon was a set of black and white photographs showcased in an advertising campaign. They were displayed across 3 continents during an international touring exhibition called The Assemblage. It lasted over a year, beginning in New York City, before traveling to London, Milan, Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Berlin. When I think about Dom Perignon, it's all about communication, so you can then have inspiration and be inspired to do something. You do not need an occasion. Life is the occasion. Lenny Kravitz. At the beginning of 2019, Dom Perignon has also seen the change of its head winemaker, their chef de cave Vincent Chaperon, picking up from Richard Joffrey after 28 years of service. This has not been an overnight transition, as both gentlemen have been working together for the past 14 years. It comes in alignment with the release of their next vintage, 2008. In the last few years, champagne sales have indicated there has been no shortage of requests for the bubbly. The UK, France, and the rest of Europe maintains its traditional growth in that region, and the last 2 years has seen a good response from the US, Canada, Mexico, and Asia. The only region that suffered in sales was Latin America and the Caribbean due to tropical storms during hurricane season. Closing. The vintage bottles of Dom Perignon will continue to serve as the most requested champagne for Moet Chandon, owner of the world's largest and most prominent winemakers. In closing, we want to leave you with 2 words of advice when it comes to buying Dom Perignon. Firstly, if you've never tried other less expensive champagnes, you'll have nothing to compare it to. You'll not be able to fully appreciate the experience that is Dom Perignon. Secondly, buy it if you're truly celebrating an event or a milestone in your life. Don't buy it simply to impress someone. That is of poor taste, and we know that Dom Perignon is of a quality that makes it the king of champagne. Now, Aluxers, before we wrap this up, let us know which vintage of Dom Perignon have you tried and which is your favorite. Let us know in the comments. And of course, for sticking with us until the end, what does that mean? You get a bonus. Here it is. Even with so many noteworthy vintages, it's the 1996 Dom Perignon Rosé Gold Methuselah that adorns the highest price tag of $49,000. The 6-liter bottle comes gold-plated, and only 35 bottles are produced yearly. It was said that a mystery Russian billionaire paid up to $76,000 for a bottle, and that includes the $16,000 tip he left the bartender. Paying over $2,000 per glass, that 1996 Dom Perignon has to be divine. Thank you for spending some time with us, Aluxer. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. If you want more, we handpicked these videos you might enjoy, or head over to Alux.com for the best in fine living content on the planet. Be a part of the largest community of luxury enthusiasts in the world and tell your story.